Hey guys, and welcome to episode 12 of the Revive Yourself podcast.
Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Have you got a health issue that just won't go away no matter what you try? Then welcome to the Revive Yourself podcast, where we reveal the secrets to long-lasting health by getting to the root cause of problems that no one else is talking about. So you can have more energy, clear skin, healthier hair, a leaner physique, more confidence, and most importantly, do the things you love and live the life you deserve. Here's your host, Ryan Martin.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 12 of Revive Yourself with Ryan Martin. This is going to be a great episode. I don't actually want to keep you too long on the intro. So today I'm talking to Terry Tillarrt all about cancer, and we get straight into it. I don't want you to have to wait around too long. So here we go, here it is, and as always, enjoy. Today's episode is, well, I already know, I think it's going to be an instant classic. It's with Terry Tillarrt, and he's from upstate New York, and he has his own website at www.terrytillarrt.com, and he's been helping people with natural health well for 15 years, and he also has been going around the United States and the rest of the world talking recently about cancer. Well, he's been dealing with it for quite a while now, but it's something that he's very, very passionate on. And I just want to say, welcome to the show, Terry. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me. Sincerely, I really appreciate you reaching out. It's great to speak to people over in the UK on the other side of the pond. I will maybe try and slow it down a little bit so they can catch my English accent. So I'm from Canada originally, and like you said, I've been speaking across North America. Cancer's a subject that's been near and dear to me, so I'm hoping I can share a few insights today. But I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, no worries. It's in America or the UK, our medical systems are pretty similar. Maybe not. We've got the NHS, so we've got a national health service. But in terms of the way they deal with and treat diseases, our systems are very similar. So whether you're from America or not, it's really interesting to hear about your take on natural health, and especially the topic we're going to be covering today, cancer. Especially, it's a very controversial topic. 1 in 2, 1 in 3 people in the world are getting it now. It's gone from, I think, 1 in 60 in the 1940s. It was. I think it might have even been less than that. So just wondering, first of all, Terry, I know I've listened to your videos, read quite a lot of the stuff you've written, but your journey into the health world was about getting an edge in performance. Was that correct from when you played hockey?
Yeah, when I played hockey, that was what started my interest in health in general. And of course, I took all the classes in high school. I thought I knew everything about health. I mean, I knew about the food pyramid. I knew about fats and carbohydrates and proteins, and that was about all you needed to know if you listened to the textbooks in school. And so I was trying to get an edge. We had a trainer, and they taught us what I thought was true about nutrition, which of course wasn't. Then I read a book from Anthony Robbins, which wasn't about health, but he had several chapters on health in there because he's all about peak performance. And everything he said in that book and those chapters had completely destroyed everything that I thought I knew about health. And so, of course, I didn't think that he would stake his reputation on that without being accurate. And his research that he provided in the book did seem very accurate. But I decided, you know what, I bought blindly what I was taught the first time. Maybe this time I won't buy blindly what Anthony was teaching either. So I researched what Tony Robbins was saying in the book, and it turns out, of course, he was right. And I realized that some of the lies they were telling us were enormous, and it seemed like everybody was in on them. I mean, the doctors, the nurses, the textbooks, the teachers, they would tell you that, meat and dairy are good for you, that grains are good for you, and that you need to eat a balanced diet according to the food pyramid, when nothing could be further from the truth. And that not only set me off on health, but that changed many aspects of my life, because that put me on a quest for the truth. I wanted to know the absolute truth on everything. And I was willing, unlike most people in our society, to unattach all my emotional connections to everything. And I just wanted to know the objective truth. And I didn't care where that led me. I had to know. And I knew if they were telling a lie that big, that there were a lot of other lies they were telling us. And so we're of course lied to about just about everything in our lives. And that's a sad reality for people to encounter at some point in time in life, but it's the truth. And so, of course, when I found out they lied about health, I found out they lied about cancer. And as you can imagine, I'm sure you went through the same journey. When I first discovered this, I was trying to tell friends and family, how we'd been lied to and how everything was wrong and how they were surely lying to us about this. And cancer, of course, was one of those subjects. And the family was not hearing very much of that. They fought it hard in the beginning. Eventually, I started putting some cracks in their armor, and they started to open their mind to some things. What happened then was, just to tie it into cancer, was 2 uncles got cancer around the same time. One was a Marian on one side of the family. One was my father's brother. And, one of them really wanted to live. One of them probably not so much, as we often see with cancer. And the one uncle that wanted to live was the Marian, and he didn't know me that well. We'd had a relationship for, probably a couple of years prior. And he pulled me aside and he said, listen, I know the stuff you've been trying to tell the family about health is actually true and right. And I know that chemo, radiation, and surgery is not the right thing for me. I know that. He said, however, your aunt wants me to stick around. I've got children. Everyone's in a panic. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to do just a few rounds of chemotherapy to get this cancer under control. And he said, and then after that, I would really like to do a lot of the things that you're teaching. And he said, so I wanted to ask you this question. What would you do if you had cancer personally? Who would you go and see? He said, what do you do? Do you just eat better and wing it and hope and pray? And I said, wow, that question really hit me hard. It really did. Even though I wasn't close to the man, I recognized that my aunt was happy for the first time in her life, and he was faced with the decision. He's one of the rare few that could see that the doctors were wrong, and I couldn't give him an answer. I had no idea where to send him. I grew up in a small town in Canada. I'd never heard of a naturopathic doctor. The internet wasn't really popular. I had no idea who to send him to. There weren't any cancer guidance systems out there. Of course, I just never come across any of it. And what hit me smack in the forehead was, what happens if this conversation is with my father next year? What happens if this conversation is with my mother 5 years from now? What will my answer be to her? I know that the doctors are wrong. I can't watch my parents suffer. I can't watch my siblings or anyone else that I care about just go and suffer when I know the hospital's wrong. And I would happily challenge the doctor, but I didn't know what they should do or could do. And I decided there's got to be experts somewhere. And when I started looking for experts, something hit me in the forehead and said, maybe I need to become one of those experts, because there aren't very many. And if it ever comes to my family, I won't know who to turn to or who to send them to. And they won't listen to me unless I become a real expert. And so that's kind of my story. And I hope I didn't go too long with that. But that's how I got really passionate about cancer, seeing that they're lying to us. And in this case, unlike the other diseases, this is terminal. This is fatal. This is the end point. Diabetes is inconvenient. Cancer was the end of someone's life. And if there was something I could do about it, I decided I needed to. So I'll stop there. I apologize.
You don't have to apologize. I mean, I feel like me and you could talk all day. So this is... that's brilliant. I was just going to say that my next question was going to be about why you got into it, and you've answered it already, which is fine. It's such when you said that about becoming your own expert, people do love, they look at doctors as rock stars, and because they did a medical degree, if they knew, I mean, I'm getting off topic, I've got all the questions like that, but we're just going to go off, because like, if it was so good and what you guys talk about natural health world was really worked, then surely the doctors would know about it. And then when you start explaining to them why they don't know about it, they think that you're conspiracy theorists and a nutcase. True? Have you experienced that?
Oh, absolutely. I've experienced it, thousands of times, and I understand that. What I wish for everybody listening to this, I wish they would take the time to actually go and study the med school curriculum. They don't need to become a medical doctor. They don't need to buy all the textbooks. There's a great gentleman, I wish I could remember his name. He has a YouTube video. He looked at vaccines in particular, and he went through all of the pages of the textbook. I think it was something like, 4,000 pages. So let's suppose it was 4,000 pages. He wanted to see how many times vaccines were actually talked about, and then he reviewed what was taught to the students within those few pages. And it was only a few pages out of the entire 4,000. And it was the identical propaganda line that we get from Channel 6 News. There wasn't any education on it. They didn't go over the vaccine ingredients. They didn't go over any of the research. They didn't go over any of the pros and cons. They didn't teach them any of that. They just didn't. And what people need to understand about the med school curriculum and the world that they're in is they follow what's called the standard of care. And that makes it easy for well-intentioned, nice doctors. I'm personal friends with a few. We had one over at our house last night. He's a fantastic friend, a wonderful human being. But the truth is they make a great income. Even once they see the truth, they can't replace the income. They're not allowed to teach things that are not FDA approved. The only things that are FDA approved are poison. And they can't replace the income. They can't get out of it. They've got student debts for many years in the early stages, and then eventually they have this wonderful lifestyle they can't replace. And they've got no training on anything else. They don't study nutrition at all. One doctor that graduated out of the University of Ottawa said he learned more about nutrition on the back of a postage stamp than you could learn in med school. And so it's not, and it's funny because, my personal friends who are medical doctors, when I talk to them about these things, they don't know any of it at all. Shocking. They've never heard of any of the herbs or oils. They don't know anything about nutrition. If you walk down the produce aisle with them, literally, they couldn't identify 50% of the produce aisle. They don't even know what the fruits and vegetables are. And that's not an insult to them. They're nice guys. It's just, it was totally not in their training, and they follow what's called the standard of care. And that standard of care plus the system is designed for them to get you in and out of the office. That's where it's, whether you have a socialized system of medicine in the UK, just like we do in Canada, or whether you're in the US where I currently live now, I've seen both sides of it. The system is the same. People are hypnotized by the fact that in an organized system of medicine like the UK or in Canada, that because they don't pay cash out of pocket, that the system isn't designed for them to still move you in and out. The system's designed to move you in and out. They must follow the standard of care or insurance will not pay and reimburse them. And they are paid for every visit, every surgery, every prescription, every person they see. They're just paid by the state instead of you, which is still paid by you, of course, because the government doesn't create anything. The government doesn't manufacture anything. They pay the doctors with the stolen tax dollars. So people just, that disconnect in the system somehow breaks up their logic of not being able to see these things. So anyway, with that, I'll pause there.
No, it's just hard because once you start, he said it's like the Matrix when he says, here's the red pill and the blue pill. But if you take this pill, there's no turning back. And once you can't unlearn stuff, and once you go into it, for someone like myself, health coach, and you, it's hard to not get passionate about it sometimes, because it's like you see all these people getting ill and you can help them and there's another way, and you're just like, it just becomes like, as you said, you don't want to get connected to things too much, but it's just like, well, why, how is this not more common knowledge? And for example, there's the truth about cancer that's been out there now, but if that was, to me, it's the same as like these algorithms on different sites. I think a lot of this stuff is still kept below the surface because it's going to cost them so much money if the truth does come out. And when people like yourself talk and you've done all the research, they can't deny it. But what they can do is they can reduce the forum that you can speak on, and then you can get people like the FDA, for example, telling you things that you can and cannot do. But the stats I'm going to talk about your program later, but I'm guessing the stats for your program far outweigh the stats for chemotherapy and radiation in terms of healing people. Would I be all right with that?
Yeah, they outpace it wildly, but even if I disconnected myself from the equation, what we find when I first embarked on this journey is studying historical success rates for cancer programs. And I hate the word alternative because it's not an alternative. Healing has been around since the dawn of time. When you fall and you scrape your knee, your body heals it. You don't have to do anything. You don't need a doctor. Your body innately knows how to heal itself. That's all it does. It's 24/7 trying to heal itself. We are the ones in the way. When an animal is sick in nature, they fast.
Oh,
Humans,
I've said that,
take
Terry,
notes.
I've said that so many times to people. I don't think, because what you said earlier about, I watched some of your videos and you're talking about how it's like certification rather than education and experience. And I've said that so many people, they're like, yeah, but my stomach, I do a lot of people got gut issues and skin issues. I said, you just need to relax. You just need to take a step back. So if an animal gets ill, they just fast. And what you just said there, you've hit the nail straight on the head. You've only been talking 14 minutes. I think it's phenomenal what you've just said there. And just for the audience, because I talk about this with my clients, etc. Can you just tell us a little bit about why, the allopathic system come into play and what was actually in place before that happened?
Yeah, I mean, here's what happened. Natural medicine was doing well, of course, for a long time. In the early 20s, I think it was in the 20s when they did it. What happened was you had all these different med schools coming up. You had the ones that were recommending chemicals, then you had the chiropractors, and you had the homeopaths, and you had all these different things. And the system was largely unregulated, which, has pros and has cons. And what happened was a lot of the med schools had low standards, so people could graduate and become a doctor of XYZ very easily. And so there was a lot of competition for the patent-driven medical system. It's patent-driven. Let's call it exactly what it is. Well, the people who want to control other people recognize that sick and tired people are much easier to control than really healthy and vibrant people. The people who are poor and dependent are much easier to control than the financially independent. So what they did was they owned all of the textbooks. They also had financial shares in the oil companies. They had financial shares in the publishing. They had financial shares in patented medicine. So what they did was they would go and fund these really big medical schools, with the wink, wink. You're about to go out of business because there was a lot of competition. They were all struggling. And every med school that you see today was one of the companies that accepted their agreement. And the agreement went like this very simply was, we'll give you $10 million in exchange. We have some of our people sit on the board of directors of your school, and you need to use our textbooks. We're going to control the curriculum if you accept our funding. We see this in modern day times. It's the same old handshake. It's been going on for thousands of years. They accept that, and then the textbooks are controlled now by. So the doctors learn what they want them to learn, but that shouldn't be a stretch. I mean, if you went to business school, there is not a chance on the planet, no matter which international finance course, no matter which banking course you took, you are not going to learn the truth about the central banking system of the world. They do not tell you about the central bank. So you can graduate with a master's degree or a PhD in business and graduate never knowing those very simple fundamentals that actually govern the entire world. You barely even learn about currencies. You can learn about currency trading, but you're not going to learn about the origins of currency or where it came from. They don't want you to know that. Anyone who graduates, whether you be a lawyer, an accountant, a business person, or a doctor, your job is to be a guardian of the system. Your job is to protect status quo, whether you know it or not. That's precisely what you're there for, and that's exactly how the education system is designed to make sure you do precisely that. And people don't realize that the role that they're playing because we get caught up in everyday living. I mean, it's called being human. So that's really how it came about. The Rockefellers took over all of that stuff. It was, it was guised under a philanthropy program, but it was a takeover. So
yeah, I mean, and you're talking about that. I mean, you're talking about earlier as well about it's very hard. You got your friends who are doctors, etc. And when people have gone through that system and then their livelihoods depend on it, it's very hard to come out of it, right? I'm interviewing Jessica Petros on Wednesday, and she's an MD, and she went through the system, and she kept on seeing that she was on, I think she said she was on like 400,000 a year, maybe more, and she kept on seeing all these people dying from the stuff that they were doing, the care they were given, and she was like, I can't do this anymore. So she went away and she actually started to study natural health, and she looked into Gerson, and then she was like, she started like realizing maybe this isn't the way, and she started contradicting doctors and writing different things on the medical charts, and it led to her sort of leaving and going down the natural health route, which she's done now. But she said, I mean, I can understand why people are on 400, 500 grand a year from prescribing chemotherapy, radiation, etc. And now I'm on a fourth of that. And, when people's paychecks are tied to the things they learn in college and from the Rockefellers, and it's been passed down, I mean, it takes a brave person to go against that and to not take the money, right?
Oh, absolutely. I give you a few great anecdotes on that. One of my friends says MD stands for mucho dinero, and 400,000 is pretty standard. That's about what some of my friends make. I know that for sure. Not all of them. I'm not going to speak about them individually, but I know that's not outside of the realm of possibility in their world. And ND stands for no dinero. The truth is, something like 60% of people who graduate as naturopathic doctors never actually go on to open a successful clinic. So because they're going against the grain. There's a huge challenge there, and you've got to accept a lot of public scrutiny. You've got to give up the cushy, easy, comfortable lifestyle. And so there are a lot of problems in that. So walking away is not easy. And I'll give you a couple stories. One of my friends, I was talking to him about it, and he said, I'm starting to see the truth, but I'm 5-10 years at best from retirement. What can I do about it? All I can do is be a good guy, point to the nutrition charts on the wall, try and talk people into healthier living. But at the end of the day, he said, our society's so conditioned, they're actually begging for the pills. They're demanding them. He said at this point, even if I didn't want to give it to them, they come in, I point to the nutrition, they say, give me the pill. He said, I write the damn paper. It makes life easy. Another example, there was a Canadian doctor who had the distribution license for this supplement that I wanted a bunch of years ago. And I had called the office and I said, listen, I'm about to leave town. I want to leave town with this supplement in tow in case we get sick on the road. This is one of my mitigating factors I want to take with me. Can I come and pick it up today? And he said, well, I can't really do that. Let me mail it to you. It'll only be a couple of days. I said, well, I don't have a couple of days. I'll meet you anywhere in the vicinity. I was living in Toronto at the time. I'll meet you anywhere in the city. And he said, okay. He said, I'm actually working at this XYZ walk-in clinic. Why don't you come and meet me? Ask for me by my first name at the desk. Tell them you're a personal friend and you're just here to drop something off. They'll pull me aside so you don't get stuck in the waiting line. And, if you can bring cash, I'll give you the stuff. I said, great. So when I got there, I was floored, Ryan. I couldn't believe that this guy knew the truth about this supplement and then would still work in a walk-in clinic. I had to ask him, even though I didn't know him. It was pretty bold, I suppose. And I said, listen, man, how can you possibly understand this vitamin C stuff and all these other supplements and nature and come here and give people poison at the same time? And he said, you're right. I'm embarrassed to be here. I'm not proud of it. The truth is I can't replace my income. This supplement that we're here to talk about today is my plan to replace that income. He said, don't get me wrong. A lot of my friends now see the problem that poison doesn't heal people ever in any case, but they have no way to get out. And he said, this is my plan to get out. He said, but a lot of my coworkers and friends, they don't know how to get out. And so here we are. I was like, oh, wow, I got it. So some of the honest doctors finally see that with all their great intentions, you cannot heal with poison. You cannot heal with poison, and you cannot heal with poison. And that fact never, ever changes. But they're stuck in the system. They can't get out. And in some ways, who are we to blame them? Most people on this call, myself included, have had financial hard times. It would not be easy for any human to walk away from an easy 400,000 or whatever that number is, coming in and try and replace it or go back to what they might perceive as poverty because they have no idea how to generate an income otherwise. That's not easy. So who are we to judge them?
I 100%. I agree. It's just when it comes to a point of the moral compass, it's just I 100%.
It's not for me.
Yeah, it's not for me. Yeah, it's not for me. But I get 100% what you say. Like when you're saying people, especially in America, you've got ads over there on TV. I mean, my girlfriend's said to you before. My girlfriend's dad, he lives in Scarsdale, and we go over there at Christmas, and every 2 seconds there's an advert on TV pushing a pill or something over there. So I know these people going to doctors have probably already seen the pill they want. It is programming, 100%. And the other thing is, people want to live the lifestyle they live in and just take a pill and get rid of their symptom rather than actually understanding that that's not going to get rid of the root cause and there's going to be problems down the line. But it's just people wanting to take the easy choice because we're in a society that wants instant gratification, in my opinion. You probably agree with that.
Absolutely.
So, as you just said there, So it moves nicely onto the cut, poison, burn. So surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. You just said you can never heal with poison, you can never heal with poison, you can never heal with poison. So someone will say, well, you know, my nan or my mum had chemotherapy and radiation, and she's still here, and so it cured her. What would you say to that?
Well, I mean, a lot of people would use the same example and say, well, George Burns lived to 102. Well, he did live. He lived in spite of smoking into beyond the age of 100. He didn't live over 100 because of the smoking. No rational person would honestly believe that. Most people say, well, a lot of alcoholics die young. Well, and I know an alcoholic who lived to the ripe age of 90. Well, he did live in spite of poisoning himself till the age of 90, not because of the tequila shots he was doing. No rational, reasonable person would believe that. Mm-hmm. So why would we believe it in any other context? People have such a hard time hearing this, so much so that I rarely state it. I usually reframe it rather than stating it like this today, but I feel inclined to say it this way today. And no human in the history of the planet has ever got well from chemo, radiation, and surgery. You cannot improve your health with mustard gas. You know, when you go and get an x-ray for a broken bone, the radiation technician goes to hide. Do you think they know something you don't? Now we're going to suggest that somebody got well and improved their health by getting thousands of doses of the chest x-ray. That's insanity. The idea that you cannot improve your health by getting stabbed at the bank machine, but you can improve your health by getting stabbed in a special building after they drug you one thread from death, which is what anesthesiology is absurd. Anesthesiology makes every system in your body shut down within seconds. That's how extreme the poisoning is. And we're going to wake up and be perfectly fine. The idea that a woman can lead an unbelievably unhealthy lifestyle, walk into the hospital with a breast tumor, go in and get stabbed and get a lump or a bump cut out of her and go home and by medical definition be cancer-free in the same day is complete insanity. Our society has lost their mind. And one of the reasons for it, as you pointed out, is willful ignorance. It's not that the information isn't out there for anyone committed to finding it. It's that they willfully don't want to see it. They would rather believe in unicorns of the mythology that there's one pill you can take and you can abuse yourself all you'd like and still somehow get healthy by taking a magic pill is complete insanity. But let me bring it full circle to tie up what I just said would be an extreme claim for most people. For starters, there are many false diagnoses. Secondly, there are a lot of cancers that are very benign. Some of them get reclassified, as thyroid cancer did recently, into technically not being cancer. So for some of those specific cancer diagnoses, the survival time is much longer than we perceive anyway. So that skews our statistics and our perception because we always hear about these outlier stories like George Burns. Because he smoked doesn't mean we should smoke. That's ridiculous. Because some people have survived, arsenic and lead poisoning or carbon monoxide poisoning in no shape, way, or form suggests that it's optimal or thriving for us to go and inhale it. And what we find is the Journal of Oncology in 2004 has every incentive in the world to pad the stats, to exaggerate the numbers, to put things in their favor, admitted that their poison system of medicine only created a 2.1% success rate for people to be surviving at the end of 5 years from listening to them if they got a cancer diagnosis. 2.1%. The placebo effect, taking the sugar pill, is 20%. So the sugar pill is 9 times better than taking their poisons, meaning, and in another large study that was done years ago, there was proof that those who avoided chemo, radiation, and surgery lived 4 times longer than those who took it, meaning that those who stopped the poisoning of their body, instead of going to sign up for more extreme poisons, because chemotherapy is mustard gas, the same stuff that we banned from wars, that's where it comes from. So those who avoided that live 4 times longer than those who took it. That's a fact. That was published in a big study in 2004 in the Journal of Oncology. They admitted that it doesn't work. 2.1%. You have better odds in Vegas. You have almost better odds at the slot machine than 2.1%. So for anyone to sign up for it and lose all of the quality of life, of course, that comes with taking chemo, radiation, and surgery is just not a rational thought process. Of course, it's very fear-driven, but it's not a rational thought process. So there are people alive in spite of taking it. So we all know stories about the aunt and the whatever, and some of them were falsely diagnosed. Some of them made very different life decisions. You know, when you get threatened with death, you make some very different life decisions. You stop stressing about the little things, and stress, as we know, is a major contributor. But cancer, at the end of the day, is something that we do. So some people, when they get the fear of death knocked into them, stop doing cancer. So they may have gotten some of the poison, and then they changed some lifestyle habits. They changed some emotional decisions. They got rid of some stress. And now they lived longer despite the hospital poisoning because they made some very different decisions about life. They stopped doing cancer on some level because it is something that we do. So, I mean, we all know those stories, but that doesn't make it a wise idea. Just like we all know people who eat large amounts of deep-fried dead animals. You know, as George Carlin used to make this joke that I love. He said, Americans will eat deep-fried raccoon assholes if you put it in front of them. They'll eat anything. In no shape, way, or form does that make it a good idea. There's nothing wise about doing that. So people do poison themselves left, right, and center, but it doesn't make it right. And chemo, radiation, and surgery, just because it's common, doesn't make it right. Obesity is common. It doesn't make it right. People eat garbage. You can survive on it, but there's a very big difference between survival and thrival. Survival and optimal. We can get away with eating some of those foods. It doesn't mean that we should. And I think that's the big difference that people need to really own. Yeah. And I'll pause.
No, that's cool. No, that's 100% agree. And the funny thing is, a lot of people don't actually know there's a thing called the 1939 Cancer Act, which means legally doctors, especially in this country, I think it's true of you as well, they can only recommend surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy. That's another reason that they can't actually recommend anything else, because then they can get taken to court and things can happen. So it's one where people just need to do their own research and know the truth. So what, as you said there, chemotherapy is poison. So what is the thinking? So we're health coaches, right? And instead of treating disease like doctors do, they look at disease. We look at health and regenerating health, and we know the body's got an innate ability to be healthy, given the right circumstances. You just have to give it those circumstances. So what is their thinking around giving someone chemotherapy? How is that going to make someone healthy again?
Well, the reason why they do it, like you said, legally they must do it or they lose their license and ergo lose that big paycheck and that cushy lifestyle with no hope for replacing it. So that's one of the biggest things people need to understand. The assumption of the general public is honestly, even though it's unspoken, the assumption of the general public is that the doctors have studied turmeric and cannabis and ginger and garlic and all these things, and they've also simultaneously studied chemo and radiation and surgery. And they've studied all the evidence, and in their infinite wisdom, they're making this choice based on the evidence, because we're told that they practice evidence-based medicine, which the evidence says they absolutely do not. The evidence says they do the exact opposite. I frequently do videos reviewing the evidence on a lot of their practices, what they would call the standard of care here in the U.S. So when they give someone an osteoporosis drug, I look at what the research actually says on osteoporosis, and it turns out they are not making the evidence-based decision at all. So the first thing people need to understand is that the assumption of the public is completely wrong. They've never heard of ginger and turmeric and all these other herbs, especially in relation to cancer. They've never heard that. What they do here is that the chemotherapy is a standard of care, that there's teams of researchers somewhere in a cloud they just need to trust, and whatever this dose of poison is the dose of poison you give for this specific cancer, and they pull it out of a damn textbook. End of story. Go ask anyone who's got tried to get multiple opinions from different oncologists about what they should do for their cancer. The answer is the same no matter what. If they do a grease test that says Taxol will be better than methotrexate for their cancer, the doctor still comes back and says, no, my textbook and our standard of care and our insurance reimbursement is based on me giving you 3 doses of Taxol. And I don't care what your grease test said that methotrexate will respond better for you. You don't get that. It doesn't matter if you go to the top oncologist or you go to the oncologist the East Coast or the West Coast, it doesn't matter. You're getting the same dose of poison for your specific cancer. I have some friends who did these $5,000 tests to try and pick the right chemo, and they were astounded that the doctor would not comply. But to take this a step further, what all cancer research is based on, and it's the allopathic mindset that the public has about alternative cancer treatments also, which is completely false and completely erroneous and deeply, deeply flawed, that there's one magic pill so long as you pick the right magic pill, whether it came from a chemistry lab or whether it came from nature, that's going to cure your cancer. You know, that's completely ridiculous. It's so absurd. And you may have heard stories about people who cured the perception of the public, cured their cancer with carrot juice, therefore carrot juice is a cure for cancer. It's complete hogwash. That's a failure to define the problem accurately. And of course, like all things in life, if you and I try to tackle an engineering problem, if we can't define the problem accurately, we can't ever get to a solution properly. But the solution in chemical-based medicine is that all research in cancer is based on tumor response rates. The tumor is the symptom. The tumor is not the cancer. It's a lump and a bump. You have this lump or the bump in your body because of hundreds of other imbalances that pre-existed that lump and bump to be there. That lump and bump couldn't be there if you had an optimally functioning immune system. The reason you have that lump or bump is because your immune system did not kill off those malignant cells, and they grew to a population in the size of billions of cells that your body has now walled off into a little tumor, an encapsulation, if you will, of a lump and a bump. Now, when they study chemotherapy kills everything. It's mustard gas. It's like dropping napalm. It's just going to kill all the fauna and the flora and the animals and everything around it, including the soldiers. It's napalm. It's mustard gas. So they drop this mustard gas and it kills everything, including the lumps and the bumps. All a chemotherapy drug has to do to be considered a successful chemotherapy drug is get that tumor to respond. So some number of those billions of cells die off. That's considered a successful chemotherapy drug. So if the tumor dies within 28 days and the patient dies on day 30, that's a successful chemotherapy drug. That also goes into the logs of a successful chemotherapy treatment. It doesn't matter if the patient dies on year 5 and 1 day after. That's considered a success in the chemotherapy world. But it's all based on tumor response rates. And the tumor is the symptom. It would be like, Ryan, when you and I have the flu and, it's coming out of all ends and our sinuses are super congested and we can't see straight and our nose is running and we can't breathe. And you come to the hospital and I say, oh, don't worry, I'll just cut your nose off and you'll be free of the flu. That is the identical equivalent. Like somehow cutting off the symptom, like the nose running, would somehow magically make you free of the flu. And people would say, well, hell no, that's not possible. I feel it everywhere. My bones hurt. Well, chemotherapy is the same thing as trying to cut out the lump or bump or poison the lump or bump. Well, somehow make somebody healthy. It's complete insanity. But the reason why doctors believe that it works is they are taught to attack. Everything in medicine is about attack, including attack the person, attack the genitals, attack the reproductive system, attack the females. You can, get a preventative double mastectomy to prevent breast cancer. Well, why don't we get preventative, cut our testicles off? Why aren't we cutting our brains off to prevent brain cancer? Of course, that's insanity, but only if you think about it. So that's how they arrive at that conclusion. If the lump or bump gets attacked and there's some kind of response in the lump or bump, this must mean that the chemotherapy drug is working and we're doing our job exactly the way we've been programmed to do, is the logic of the doctors. And the research, that's what they're fed. It responds XYZ time frame.
Yeah, 100. And it's everyone knows, you think most people know that chemotherapy is that it actually suppresses your immune system massively, and your immune system
destroys it.
Yeah, destroys it. It completely destroys, wipes it out. Same with sugar destroys it for hours as well. So chemotherapy completely destroys it, and it's the one thing that keeps you healthy. So instead of boosting your immune system and allowing it to attack these malignant cells and detoxify your system and all the things it does in its miraculous ways, they go the other way, and they try to destroy everything and hope only the good stuff grows back. That's what you're saying.
It's exactly it. And, this pattern is evident elsewhere. The dermatologist tells you that the sun causes cancer when the exact opposite is true. Actually, and we don't have the time to discuss this. So I've got a blog on my website for anyone who wants to see that.
Right, I was going to say, actually, one of the questions is actually about that later on. I will go into that a little bit later on because, hugely, that's something that does my head in as well. I was in Tenerife a couple of New Years ago with my friend, and we saw the dad just putting on factor 50 on this young boy, and the young boy was like Afro-Caribbean, and he was just putting on all this chemical sun lotion. And my friend's also a health coach, and we were just sitting there, and he was going, "Should we say something?" And I was like, "Oh, you can't."
You're right.
You can't. And I was just like, and it's just a shame, right? It's just the sun's hugely healing. I'll ask you about that later on. We won't get into that right now. So you've mentioned before in a few of your videos that some of the tests that you wouldn't have. You said you wouldn't have an MRI, you wouldn't have a CT scan, etc. Why is that, and what would you have instead?
Sure. Well, testing is definitely a complex subject, but it's hard to get people to imagine that the hospital, like other things, doesn't have the monopoly on testing. We're programmed in the movies and the television shows and the text. We're programmed since birth to believe that it's cutting edge technology they're using in the hospital, but it's like Stone Age technology. Everything in the hospital when it comes to testing is about measuring disease. It's not about measuring health. And there is a very big difference. But not only are they measuring for disease, they're causing it. CT scans and PET scans. Some of this stuff can be as high as 1,100 chest x-rays. So we've got a sick person fighting for their life, and they go in and see the doctor in the span of 6 months, and they get 3 or 4 of these. So they get 4,000 chest x-rays for a sick person and expect nothing bad to happen. How could we not expect a negative health outcome from that? The MRIs, the contrast dyes that are used in an MRIs can cause instant death. It can cause instant kidney failure. How are we pretending that this is not happening? And then people say, well, the magnetic resonance imaging is a lot safer than the x-rays. Okay, that's fair. But I still personally wouldn't do it. If you don't think that humans are affected by magnetism, just ask the astronauts. When the astronauts originally tried to, leave the orbit of the Earth without magnetism, they get sick. And when we reintroduce magnetism, they get well. Everything on the planet, is affected by magnetism, electromagnetism. To think that magnetic resonance imaging is not going to have any impact on us is crazy. To think of ultrasounds, well, anyone who's studied cymatics, you can go on YouTube and watch a 2-minute cymatics video and watch how all matter, all form and function is changed by sound and by frequency. We're completely impacted by it. Everyone's seen the, you hit the tuning fork or you play the instrument at the right frequency and all the glass shatters. Don't tell me that we're not affected by sound, an ultrasound. These are non-harmonic frequencies. So, of course, we're affected by these things. If we want to take a look at mammograms, well, a thermogram is light years more accurate. This is well proven in the science. There isn't a debate in the science about this. A thermogram is safe. The adage of first do no harm is something I never want to violate. I take that seriously. So if a thermogram causes no harm, predicts a cancer significantly faster, earlier, safer, more accurately than does a mammogram or any of these other dangerous tests, why are we not doing that? If we can go to the hospital and get the standard blood tests, that would be one of the things that are relatively safe. So I suppose you could sign off on those things. But what they send it off to the lab to measure is disease-based. I've seen people near terminal come back with good blood tests. So it's not telling us anything. What the hospital would never dare do is test what you might be deficient in. Much like a car, when it runs out of oil, the engine is going to die. The body, to use that simple metaphor, has certain parts that when those parts are no longer present, when you run out of those things, you are going to have problems. When you are iodine deficient, you are going to have problems. Would the hospital ever dare measure for iodine? Are you kidding? No way. We could go on with lots of examples. There's one last example. I'll stop there. There are many different ways that you can test outside of the hospital and measure for health. The live blood, let me do one more. The live blood example would be one of them. The live blood is so damn honest, it's so instant, it's so accurate that it never lies. The interpretation of the results is subjective, but the truth about the health of the person and whether you gave it a poisonous substance or a health promoting substance, the blood will respond. And people say, well, why isn't it in a hospital then? It's been around for decades. It's never going to be in the hospital, because if you and I did a live blood analysis and the good doctor with his nice smile or her sex appeal and her smile and her good bedside manner said, go home and take this poison pill.
Sorry about that one second.
And we're going to come back.
Sorry. I said FaceTime me. Sorry, Stephen, carry on.
Okay, and you go and say, okay, I'm going to come back next week and see how my body's responding to this poison pill. And we did live blood. Well, live blood would ruin the entire scam of the medical system in one test. It would just be like instantaneous. I'll give you an example. I used to do these live demonstrations and these live seminars, and we'd bring a live blood analyst in, and what we found, by the way, was only about 4% of the people in any given audience were healthy. And of course, you can go to the hospital, see your doctor, go for the routine checkup, get your hammer on the knee, grab the testicles and cough. They look in your eye, they look in your ear, you do a blood test, and he tells you go home healthy. Well, when I test with live blood, the opposite is true. Those people who just had a doctor's appointment, when we come test them properly, we find out that they're definitely not healthy. But what we would also do then is take an unhealthy person, give them a health-promoting substance, one that had a fast reaction time, and then prick their finger again, blow it up under the microscope by 30,000 times magnification, and we would see that health-promoting substance had a change in their blood that was measurable and everyone could visually see it. Then we would also take someone healthy in the audience out of that 4% and say, okay, your doctor has been telling you, or the media has been telling us our whole lives, that we need to drink milk to be healthy. Let's see what really happens. And then they would drink cow's milk, and then we would go and prick their finger again, and their blood was just hemorrhaging on the microscope, and it was so instantaneous for us to see it. So there's a few examples there where you can go measure for deficiencies via blood or urine outside of the hospital, hair mineral analysis tests, thermograms, live blood analysis. That's just the tip of the iceberg, because all testing is very pros and cons. There's no perfect test in any shape, way, or form. I've got an audio that goes on for more than 2 hours talking about the pros and cons of lots of different testing options. And the truth is we need multiple tests to get the truth, but none of those tests come from the hospital. And my first criteria is, does it do harm? Because if it does, that ends right there. Let's find a test that first does no harm, and we'll go from there to get the data to figure out what's really going wrong with your health. And with that, I'll pause.
I 100% agree. And I think listening to, I can't remember who exactly was talking. I was just listening to it, and it was saying about they looked at those cadavers, and they found that in the majority, I think about 70% or 80% of people had, once they did tests on them, had been exposed or had cancer 4 to 5 times throughout their life, but because they didn't know, their immune system just regenerated, dealt with it, and went on about things rather than getting tested for things. I think tests can, once again, you get tested for something, it comes back, you've got cancer, it sends your immune system, it gives you a right emotional shock, right? To the point of, as you said, it usually has some sort of chemical, emotional, physical stimulus to get you to the point of being ill. And it completely ruins or destroys your immune system. So these are things, tests for me are something that can cause, unless you're not feeling great, etc. A lot of the time it can be something that I'd say I suggest staying away from, because it can just give you, I say, false positives, or it'll just cause a problem in your life that you hasn't got one. My nan went in, for example, had a test, mammogram, etc. They said, oh, they found something. They couldn't be sure. Ended up going in. Oh, well, just to make certain, just to make everything sure, we'll do a biopsy. I couldn't be sure of that. They went, well, let's just give you some radiation instead. This was years ago. 6 weeks later, she went in and walked into hospital. 8 weeks later, she was dead. You know, and it was just like, it's just like from not needing anything. And so everyone's been through this. That's why I say testing can be very dangerous. You need to know, but we mentioned there, thermograms, some thermographies, like I suggest them too. And you said you can be deficient in things. So for people, well, this is the other thing. When they do the MRI test, right? What do they inject into people? It's sugar substance, yes, sugar solution. That's correct, isn't it? It's a sugar solution.
Well, for some of the dyes, imaging scans, they use either dyes and sometimes a sugar solution. That's correct.
Because the sugar solution, the cancer will find the sugar. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And so, what do they feed people after chemotherapy, or what do they say to people? Eat what you want, and they're giving them McDonald's and Jell-O.
Yeah, McDonald's, Jell-O, ice cream, whatever you want.
Yeah, and these are all things that promote cancer.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt, without a shred of doubt, which is insanity.
Yeah. So people for going into these, what are some of the things that will promote cancer growth, and people are deficient in? What would people be deficient in, and what would promote cancer growth in your opinion?
Well, let's take vitamin D, for example, because the science is very strong on vitamin D. If you have really low vitamin D, which I would loosely call the quarterback of the immune system, your immune system doesn't really work well without some form of coordination. Vitamin D seems to play that role. But when you're really low in the sunshine vitamin, your immune system is going to be really deficient. You know, so if they run tests with almost anybody with cancer, what we find out, almost anybody with cancer runs a vitamin D test. They're all low. It's almost invariable. It's almost a guarantee. Testing is more like to just to get a baseline so we can see where they were and then have something that we can test against down the road to find out if they're absorbing, let's say, vitamin D or getting adequate sunshine and got their levels to up to a reasonable, suitable level where their immune system can function properly. So if you have low vitamin D, your risk for cancer is through the roof. So most definitely when you've got a vitamin D deficiency, you're going to have that problem. You know, we talked about iodine earlier. That's another one of those. But what I want people to understand more than anything is that we live in a cause and effect world. Your body requires large amounts of vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients, which are found in fruits and vegetables. Your diet needs to be dominated by fruits and vegetables in the raw, natural, organic, ripe state, the way it was always intended, the way it would have been when humans were around before big agricultural farming was done. And we get a wide variety of vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals and all these different things found in those foods. And anyone not eating those diets is eventually going to create a deficiency. And if we take a Ferrari, for example, it's got, thousands of all the best parts. But if I cut the brake line, that Ferrari is useless. If I remove one of the tires, the Ferrari is useless. If I remove the steering wheel, the Ferrari is useless. If I unplug the spark plug, the Ferrari becomes useless. I only have to remove one piece out of thousands on the greatest machine, by some people's definition, but the greatest machine known to man, and it completely breaks down. It's completely non-functional with one missing part. Why would humans assume that the same thing could not happen in their bodies? Your body requires magnesium to do a wide variety of functions. In the absence of magnesium, there are thousands of chemical reactions that do not happen. So certain normal bodily functions are not going to work. So you're going to eventually have immune deficiency if you are not getting those things. We're supposed to get them in the food. So for starters, if you're not eating a lot of those foods, you're definitely going to create a wide, broad spectrum of deficiencies. So people need to own that. But things like the sunshine vitamin, which your doctor will tell you causes cancer, is one of the greatest cancer preventative things that you can do. No different than, let's talk about that. On that note, I want to just mention that the health fundamentals, like eating the proper diet, like getting sunshine, like rest and low stress, like drinking clean water, and well water is not clean water, and tap water is not clean water, breathing clean air. You're either going to be the air filter or you're going to have an air filter. Sleep and rest are irreplaceable, but it doesn't make any sense for humans to sleep on a bed that's poisoning them. You spend 1/3 of your life in it. It doesn't make any sense. It's a violation of the health fundamentals to sleep on an electromagnetic coil, an electromagnetic antenna that is off-gassing fire retardants and arsenic and all these other poisons into your body while you sleep. It doesn't make any sense. But just on that same thread of cause and effect, you can't escape the fundamentals. And a part of the fundamentals of health is having adequate vitamins and minerals, the parts of your car that need to be there, or things are not going to work right, and you're going to have some very real health problems. So I don't know if I've adequately touched on that, but if I didn't, extend the question. If you want to touch on other things, I'll pause there and let you guide this.
No, it's just I mean, I 100% agree. There's so many things. It's the thing. People, I used to be like this before I got into it. The reason I got into it, not just that, is because I was ill myself, and I used to be the guy who think, you can eat what you want. If you get ill, you just take a pill, right? But it's not just a one thing. It's just not magic bullets. It's not that you can just juice and that's gonna get rid of your illness, etc. It's a whole lifestyle approach. So it's not one magic bullet. There might be 100 magic bullets. You put them all together and it's a different lifestyle approach, right? It's not just one thing. So you touched on quite a few things there. You said water, sun, food, etc. But I mean, the other thing, I remember I've seen in one of your videos, and you actually go off on one. You just wind up, let you go about essential oils, and people don't understand how powerful essential oils are. I think that you talk about this because your knowledge on it was really good. You're talking about why they work. It's about oxygenating. You just go into that a little bit for me.
Well, sure. I mean, they definitely oxygenate the body, and we definitely have cell receptor sites. I mean, without getting into a long detailed thing, the body has receptor sites. Your body already recognizes nature. Your body already recognizes plants. Your body recognizes fruits and vegetables as optimal species appropriate food sources. Why would we accept that essential oils might not do the same thing? I mean, take some of the food-based ones or some of the traditional herbs. So if basil and oregano are just fine in mama's spaghetti, why are there so many blogs and websites trying to scare you away from oregano oil? I mean, it's okay in mama's spaghetti, but it's not going to be okay in oil form. Well, of course it's going to. And what we look at when we see the research data, and you go and examine the research data, is that it has a lot of health promoting properties, and most of them do. Almost all plants do. Not all of them, but a huge percentage, a majority of them. And these plants that have been passed on and used for thousands of years do that also. I mean, why wouldn't it? There's a reason why they've been used for thousands of years. The ancient people of different medicinal cultures were not stupid. They are totally in tune with nature. And so, we could talk about this on quantum levels, on vibrational levels. They all have vibrational frequencies, which we respond to, as I talked about earlier with cymatics and sound. So these essential oils, just like all the other plant herbs, I mean, an oil is a concentrated herb. It's the easiest way for people to get their head around it. And society's programming would have us believe that herbs are voodoo medicine, except that the research data says the exact opposite. There are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of studies proving that plants heal the body. Plants bring the body back into balance. They push the body back into balance. Any substance that increases oxygenation, any substance for which you have cell receptor sites for, any substance that is a harmonic vibrational frequency is going to push the body back into balance. I mean, the oils would be no different, just like any of the other herbs would be. And so, yeah, I mean, they're great medicinal substances. They're highly concentrated. They smell wonderful. If nothing else, everyone should be using them at least as a substitution for chemicals. If people insist on using deodorants or perfumes or colognes, why would you not use a plant-based oil, something that is non-toxic, to create the exact same? Where do people think that the idea of perfumes and colognes and deodorants and fragrance shampoos and hand soaps originally came from? I mean, why not just return to nature? Our society is so disconnected from nature and living a natural life. Like the idea that the sun would cause cancer. Well, why don't we hear about the giraffes and the epidemic of skin cancer? And why don't we hear about the chimpanzees and the crocodiles getting skin cancer? Like, people, stop and think. All species live and die by the sun. So do humans. We are sick because we strayed away from nature and we don't honor nature and we live a very unnatural lifestyle, and that's why people are sick. And if we would just move towards nature in all ways, people would improve their health. Sure, they still need experts at some point in time when their health has gone too far, because an expert's going to help them identify what they're doing wrong and is going to set the record straight on a lot of the myths. But if everyone would just move a little closer to nature and did nothing else, their health would improve, guaranteed. That's one of the biggest takeaways I just wish people would really honor. We're sick from a deficiency in nature, not a deficiency in poison.
Mm-hmm. And it's that's what people don't understand as well about the fragrance industry being completely unregulated, and it causes a lot of problems, especially nowadays if people get more and more allergic to things. We talked about this a little bit with Dr. Sherry Tenpenny as well, saying about the hotels in Las Vegas getting sued. For example, people can't sleep, they get skin rashes, and you've got things like essential oils. And it takes great bravery to come out and talk about these things. I'm just looking on the website right now. I was looking about the Cancer Act, and it said in 2014 a guy called Errol Denton was fined £1,000 to each 9 offences, which cost him £9,000 something, for claiming that live blood analysis, lifestyle changes, and herbs could cure cancer. And it's like, that's why you gotta be careful, because as I say, like, if we're not on here telling people, obviously you got to consult your doctor, etc. But this is just our opinions. So it's just mad when you look at all the different things. I think there's a couple of, I'm not going to touch on that actually, because I don't.
No, go ahead. We can touch on a few things.
No, I was going to say there's a few doctors and stuff that have gone missing because they've been promoting certain things like cannabis oil and apricot kernels and things like that. So it's just you do your own research, guys, and just at the end of the day, it's your body. And I think no bit of paper, no bit of research can tell you more than your body can when it comes to how you're fitting. Something I've heard you say before, talking about like how can people just lost sight of it, as you said there. People have lost sight about something natural like essential oils, and they go and they spend £60 on a bottle of perfume from Prada or something. And essential oils, you're talking about food grade essential oils, right? Not like rubbish you're going to buy down in your local, well, not your local, because some health shops are good, but in your local commercial health shop. You're talking about food grade essential oils, right?
Oh, yeah, that get the highest grade possible. Mm-hmm. Why would people be always trying to cut corners? I don't understand that in our society. Like, I would not. That industry is run by big brokerage houses, and the distillation techniques, the farming practices, where everything is sourced, is highly corrupted. You can use chemical extraction very easily. So if you're buying the wrong stuff, you can easily get yourself poisoned. And I wanted to touch on one other thing. So you can think, and just extend on that, you can think that you're doing the right thing and still end up poisoning yourselves. Make no mistake about that. And the same with trying to get, really cheap herbs. I mean, a lot of them, when you open up the capsule, it's not herbs in it. That means there's been studies on that too. So,
oh, yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to touch on when you said, this guy who got sued, the £9,000, and I feel really bad for them. And I think that's also a part of the problem. It's not that you take an herb that cures cancer. That's not how it works at all. But your body heals from it. It's a healing process. It's not about taking an herb that attacks the lump or the bump. It's about the body healing from it, dealing with the fundamental reasons for why it was there in the first place. It's not about taking the right herb or the 3 magic herbs. And it's not that any of the herbs get rid of the cancer. You actually just supported your body in allowing it to heal from the cancer. It's your immune system that gets rid of it in every single case. When I help somebody, it's their body that does the work. I guide them. It's their body that does the work, and they've got to do the work in creating that internal environment.
I love that.
It's not about a pill that cures anything.
No, I love that. He said no doctor or health coach has ever cured anyone. It's the body. It's just giving the people the right guidance and the right path to follow, right? It's that's one of the things we know about how magnificent the body is. It's just trying to get other people to realise that. So when people say, it's like, people say you've got high blood pressure, you've got to take this pill. And it's like, so your blood pressure's high for a reason. Do you think that this pill knows more than your physiology? It's like, it baffles me. It's like, it's one of, it just goes on. I want to talk about your cancer program. Because I want people to know, well, basically who does it help? And why does it work? Because I wanted to get it out there, because if people are listening, you can go onto www.terrytillarrt.com, and he actually has his cancer program up to people to buy. You can go in there and buy it. But I just want you to, from the horse's mouth, why does it work? What principles does it follow? And who can it help?
Well, and you reminded me that I went off on a tangent earlier and I forgot to finish my story. That historical track records of previous cancer programs is what I originally started studying, and my cancer program is not about me inventing all kinds of fancy stuff. It's about standing on the shoulders of giants that have been around for decades and decades and decades, discovering what does work. And first and foremost, I believe that I believe in the true traditional naturopathy principles, and that is not skipping any of the fundamentals. I don't believe in magic pills or magic supplements. What supplements can do strategically is compress time frames. What supplements can do strategically is support the body in different ways. You can use substances that heal the liver faster than fruits and vegetables, as an example. And so, what my cancer program is based on is first educating people on all of those fundamentals. And I think that's the most important part. It's ridiculous. Our society's come to the idea that they think they can go in a social media blog and read a 3-liner post from somebody that you could write, "I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer," and someone responds, "Cannabis, turmeric, and Gerson." And they think that's all that they need to do. It's mind-boggling. People will not change their own oil. They would never try and fix their own lawnmower. And then they got a death sentence, and they say, "You know what? I got this. I read 3 lines in a blog somewhere." That's obscene. That's insanity to me. And my cancer program really is that, I've read probably 100,000, scientific journals on various plant-based substances. So I really know what does help and help people narrow in on, what to do, what not to do, how to test and measure healthfully, and how to measure health instead of measuring disease, how not to poison yourself, a lot of the what not to do's, which are often as valuable of a lesson as the what to do's. And I give them, a lot of accurate distinctions on diet. I talk to them about the supplements that actually work so they're not wasting their time. And more importantly, how to potentiate supplements. So there's synergy in nature, just like there's synergy in teamwork, in any regular real life setting. And there are certain supplements that have been proven to make others significantly more powerful. So how do we layer a lot of different things to get leverage on that? How do we find out the cancer programs that had 50% historical track records and take the best parts of it and combine with what science has now taught us in 2017? How do we take historical track record cancer programs that had 90% success rates, take the best of what they had also, contrast that against different filters of what we find in nature and what we find in the medical literature, the stuff that actually works. And so, I didn't invent it all. It's not like I've got some monopoly on cornering things. I think that my program is the most thorough and comprehensive that anyone's going to find. It's the most economical that anyone's going to find in a pre-recorded format, which is step 1, is how people can get expert advice for a fraction of the price of paying somebody one-on-one, and then we can get that adequate conversation in there. And going to clinics costs an absolute fortune, and then people still get stuck coming home and having to heal, because you can't go to a clinic and just inject your way into health in a few weeks. It's just unfortunately not how health works. So as we've been talking about all day long, so really that's what I do. I focus on education, and I focus on the research and standing on the shoulders of giants from many different programs in history, and contrast that with filters of nature, filters of what the research really says, and how do we potentiate things instead of just winging it? How do we take a strategic approach and systematically deal with the multifactorial root causes for why the dis-ease was there in the first place? Because the only path to long-term healing is to systematically address the multifactorial reasons for why it was there in the first place. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if you get rid of the lump or bump, whether you do it with nature or with chemistry, it's going to come back because the root causes were not addressed. And that's what I really focus most of my energy and efforts on. So hopefully that gives people a little bit of an overview of what we're teaching in there. So
yeah, 100%. And it's people just don't understand, even some of the people in natural health don't understand, it's not just diet. And you're looking at what you're cooking your food in, what water you're drinking, the air you're surrounded in, what stuff you're putting in your skin, on your hair. I mean, it goes deep, right? There's multiple factors in this, and it's not just the food you're eating, although that is a big part. Yeah, hundreds, as you said.
Hundreds and hundreds of distinctions. If anyone thinks diet is all there is to it, someone with stage 4 lung or pancreatic cancer, I don't care if they have the most perfect saintly diet you could ever imagine, their odds of making it are very, very, very slim with diet alone. And there are so many other options. You know, my question to you, Ryan, and any of the listeners is, if you were dying and there were hundreds of things you could be doing or needed to know about, why would you only gamble, which is what it is, it's gambling, with doing 3 or 5 when there's 105? I know I would never tell my mother she got cancer, even if I didn't know what I know. Hey, just get on Google and wing it. I would never give her that advice. Why are humans doing it? I don't get it.
It's just one of the, I actually did a post on this about a week ago, I think. It was like, why'd you go into your mechanic? You don't just sit there and start taking parts out of your car yourself, do you? You go to someone who's a professional, and they do the job, because you'll either do it yourself, muck it completely up, or it'll take you 10 times longer. And so as you put them on your videos as well, it's like, you gave yourself cancer, so how are you going to know how to get rid of it? You know, it's one of those.
Yeah, right.
It's true. You said, like, I don't want to be harsh, but you've given yourself cancer. It's not, people think it's bad luck. It's one of the topics we can probably touch on another time. It's like genetics and epigenetics. People say, well, I'm going to get my breast cut off because I've got a history of breast cancer in my family. It's like, yeah, but do you know about epigenetics? Like, no, what's that? It's like, well, we're talking about how environmental factors, lifestyle factors, if you live a certain way, you're not going to express those genes. I mean, and people, you see women all over the world getting their breasts cut off, having hysterectomies. I know it's just a nightmare. So your program, is it, I mean, someone who's got stage 4 pancreatic cancer, or someone who's got, leukemia, or if someone's got, lymphoma, for example, is it for everyone? Can everyone participate in it, or would certain people need to see different programs?
Everybody can participate. It will help every single person who got the diagnosis. There's zero doubts about that, because the health fundamentals of this world just never, ever, ever change.
So from a brain tumor to a liver cancer, it's all...
Right. And what does change? See, most people think that where the cancer is, or what label a doctor's given it is what's important. The cancers have thousands of things in similar versus so few in difference. And what I talk about in my program is I say, okay, if you've had, these specific cancers, which do have some different characteristics, if you've already been through chemo, radiation, and surgery, if you have these, few extreme cancers, we should have a consult post-program, definitely, to discuss some of those nuances and distinctions that would definitely apply to you. So take brain cancer, for example. Or any of the cancers. One of the misconceptions of our society is that nature can't remove cancer cells, or the immune system can't kill these cancer cells. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, you can kill cancer cells too fast and put the person in trouble. You can kill the cancer cells in a way that happens so quickly that the tumor temporarily inflames before it contracts. And so in the cases of breast cancer, I talk about the program. One of the things we need to be very concerned about is inflammation. We need to be very prudent about making sure we don't swell any brain tumors before they shrink. So the program gives everyone those fundamentals, and then there's post-program consults and stuff to discuss those distinctions. The truth is, 80 to 90% of the people who choose to work with me and implement that program, because I equip them with how to test and measure, and they send me those tests, and we can, we have a feedback loop with those things, don't tend to need much beyond that. But there are special situations where they definitely do, and so we handle those things, on a case by case situation.
Okay, and two questions about it. Does your program cover parasites and how they can affect cancers?
Yeah, we definitely discuss that,
Yeah.
discuss ways to get rid of it and handle it as one of those potential causative factors. Like I don't want to leave any potential stone unturned. I want to make sure that we're being as thorough and comprehensive as possible to make sure that any root cause does not go under our radar as much as is humanly possible to figure out how did you get to this place to begin with.
Okay. And how long is your program, or how long is a bit of stream?
It's about 16 and a half hours, and I'm adding a few short, kind of summary video modules that go at the end of some of the existing modules. So it's about 17 hours. I call it the naturopathy course in a box, if you will. I just think it's necessary for people to understand their health at that level to heal properly.
So for people to go through it, it would take them how many weeks, do you say?
Well, I mean, it's just a function of math. Anyone could, in theory, go through the entire thing in a weekend, and I have seen people do that. And some people stretch it out over many weeks. And the truth is, most people listen to it 2 or 3 times because that's necessary. Some of the stuff is way over their head. Not that it's intended to be that way. For just the sheer fact of anyone's capacity to memorize 17 hours is near impossible. So people listen to it more than once, and it's just a function of how committed they are to getting through it.
Yeah, 100%. And just last thing I want to touch on. Would I be right in saying you're pro-vegan diet?
Well, I'm absolutely pro-vegan diet, but I want people to understand that I'm a plant-based eating advocate for health reasons first, unlike almost 100% of vegans out there doing it for moral and ethical reasons. As an animal lover, I absolutely see, appreciate, and understand those things. I also teach people, unless you're really sick, you can get away with a few missteps here and there. It doesn't. But just because you like something, or you're willing to tolerate something, or you have some flexibility in your, some people call it a flexitarian, or whatever you want to call it, whatever label you want to put on it, the research data shows that a plant-based diet wins. There's no the primates, for which we have an identical digestive anatomy to compare to, are not the ones who read the wrong textbooks. They're not the ones who've been subject to advertising and programming, and they're not at the whims like humans are. We are designed to eat a certain set of foods, just like every other species on the planet, and the better we adhere to it, and science does confirm when we adhere to it, we get better. So yeah, absolutely, I'm a pro-vegan proponent, and if those who want to do 95%, then do 95%, and just be intellectually honest enough to state that you're going to be a little bit flexible, because that makes your life a little more practical, versus saying, no, I like it, therefore it's good for me.
Yeah,
I mean, because there's nothing intellectually honest about that.
Okay, I just want to put up a couple of things to play devil's advocate here, because I just want listeners to hear a lot of different people talk about a lot of different ways to do stuff. And there's obviously people not buy into it, but people have their clinics, and they work in their own way. So, for example, have you heard of Dr. Nick Gonzalez?
Absolutely.
So, and you may have heard of his story with Dr. Kelly, who was treating people. He was a dentist. He was treating people with cancer, etc. And he always put them on a raw plant-based diet. And he used to get phenomenal results with everyone, or most people that hadn't been completely damaged. And then he had this one woman who put her on a raw plant-based diet, and her tumour just wouldn't go away, and she wouldn't get any better. And the only thing he hadn't tried was putting her on meat and fats. So that's what he did. He changed her diet around, and he put her on meats and organic meats, obviously, and fats. And her tumour, after a while, disappeared. And it's a story I've also heard from people, health coach out there, Paul Chek. You probably heard of Paul Chek.
Yep.
Recommends people who have gone on vegan diets, so they've cured their cancer, or helped their body heal. And then 4 or 5 years later, that cancer has come back. And he states it's because the same thing that got rid of their cancer then gave them it, because their body was then deficient in other minerals and nutrients that plants alone can't give them. And they don't have to have lots of meat. He even says that most people eat far too much. He even says maybe being vegan for 90% of the time is best. Would you say that people are different? Everyone's different. We're as different on the inside as we are on the outside. And that for some people, vegan may not work. But although it's powerful for the majority of people, others have to find their own path and what works for them.
Well, I have to stick to being a scientist in this case, and the scientific data says the exact opposite. I mean, if you want to talk about a vegan diet in relation to cancer specifically, there was a large study done showing that people who had vegan blood, and they compared vegetarians, they compared people who were lacto-ovo, pescatarian, people who made slight modifications, people who only had small percentages in their diet. They looked at lots of these different things. There have been many studies, not just a study. What they found was people who had a vegan diet, their blood was 8 times more cancer-killing power than those who consumed even the tiniest amount of animal flesh of any source. So humans tend to find things that work and then stick with it. People don't fix things, don't break things that aren't broken. When I listened to a lot of Gonzalez interviews, they had a series of different diets, but there was no real scientific basis. I've heard Gonzalez admit point blank, he did it because other people did it historically, and there wasn't any real good scientific data for why they were making those choices. What we find in nature is that we have people like to think that we're all so different. We're different insofar as where our health is currently, today, right now. Yes, deficiencies are huge. Deficiencies can absolutely be created on a vegan diet. You can eat a junk food vegan diet. You can eat a garbage vegan diet. You can do something really well for 6 months while you're sick and disciplined, and then change your lifestyle 5 years later. And guaranteed, if you can recreate the problems you created years in the past, even if you remained a vegan. For example, being a vegan doesn't by any shape, way, or form in and of itself guarantee that you're healthy. However, from a cancer perspective, the vegan blood was 8 times more anti-cancerous. That's hard to argue with. Furthermore, 2 other things that I talk about in terms of distinctions, because I think everything's about distinctions rather than generalizations. Humans produce an enzyme called pitalin. Only people who are frugivorous by design produce pitalin. There's never been a human in the history of the planet that does not produce pitalin. Uricase is the enzyme that digests animal flesh. Every carnivore and a true omnivore produces uricase. There's never been a human tested in the history of the planet that produces uricase. My standard always to Paul Chek, Nick Gonzalez, and that's not an attack on them. It's just fill in the blank. I'm using them as metaphors for all the other proponents for other forms of eating and living to produce that evidence, because I have criteria where I will change. Some people want to accuse those who are insist on being objective and factual of being rigid. I would absolutely change my position if you could show me someone who has got a digestive anatomy that produces a different set of enzymes and a different set of stomach acids and has different lengths of stomach relative to their bodies and so on and so forth. If someone could show me that evidence, I would absolutely change my position that some people should eat X and some people should eat Y. But that's never happened, and it's never going to happen. So that would be huge. And 2 more distinctions to share with the audience would be this. Cancer is very, 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 very dependent. Research shows this, I believe, conclusively, that cancer is extremely dependent on 2 specific amino acids. And guess where they're found? They're found in really high percentages in animal flesh but just about all forms, and they're almost non-existent in plant-based forms. If cancer has an absolute methionine dependency, for example, how can it be that somebody eating a high methionine diet is going to thrive when the scientific data shows that cancer is absolutely methionine dependent? And I could say the same thing, with glutamine and all these other things. So we could go on of layers and layers of this conversation where just because somebody did it doesn't make it right. Just because culturally we consume more animal flesh than the damn mountain lions do doesn't make it right. Doesn't mean that therefore that's what the species was designed to thrive on. Nature, God, it doesn't matter what you want to believe in. They're moot points. When I analyze somebody, mouth to anus, digestive anatomy, we are identical for every single form of and function. For all practical purposes, we're identical. Cows have more blood types than humans. They all eat a species-appropriate diet. And I could say the same for many other species. They have different blood types, different subspecies, different variations externally, just as do humans. But from a digestive anatomy standpoint, from a practical standpoint, from a what actually happens in nature standpoint, they all consume a species-appropriate diet. And humans would be very wise to get rid of cultural justifications for wanting something to be true that simply is not. And I think that it's so important to be objective first, and then just decide what you'll live with after, and stop all the bullshit of making up stories about why something should be true or could be true or might be true for me but not for you because I want it to be so. I think bacon and cheese and eggs and all this stuff have just as much flavor. I used to enjoy those flavors just as much as anybody else, but it doesn't leave me being an objective, logically consistent, intellectually honest person to state, therefore, it's good for me. I think wine, fine wines are delicious. That doesn't make me intellectually honest by stating, therefore, it's good for me.
Yeah, okay, 100%. Only one thing I'd say, I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I just want people, I know people will ask different questions. If someone was eating in that way and they were having a bit of meat, not going over the top, because I 100% do agree, most people, I mean, they're eating meat like it's going out of fashion, and most of it is not even high quality. Especially in your country, I mean, you've got a right epidemic of terrible farming practices. As you talked about earlier, it's not just about the meat. It goes on about the energy that's inside the meat. The animal's been treated terribly, been fed terribly. I mean, some of them can get away with, they can't feed us this food because it's illegal, but they can feed cattle these foods. Things like sawdust, petroleum pellets, etc. Rendered food. People don't want to know what rendered food is. But if someone's eating a little bit of meat and they were vegan before. I don't know if you heard of Leah Keith. Have you heard of Leah Keith?
No, I'm not familiar. No.
Sorry. She's got a book out there called Vegetarian Myth, and she was saying that she was vegan for 10 years, and then she started to lose her hair. She started to feel terrible, teeth. She was getting, she couldn't sleep, etc. And then she had a little bit of meat in, and all of a sudden she felt phenomenal. If people are feeling that way, and this is not me just trying to be a nightmare for you here. Would you say, I know because someone said we would love to see the science, and the science, in my opinion, a lot of the time is the magic. People don't, oh, what's the science and what's this book say? What about if their body's telling them one thing? Would you say, okay, if you're feeling a lot better on a little bit, and it's making you've gone from being tired and not being able to sleep and your testosterone being low and not having any energy, and you've added a little bit and you feel a lot better, okay, go for it. Or would you just say, no, I want you to cut me out completely?
I mean, I think that there's a lot to be said for living a practical life, and I'm not opposed to some of life's practicalities. If it makes you feel better and you really want to do it, I mean, by all means, knock yourself out. We're all going to end up in a restaurant at some point in time and order some things that are outside of our standards, outside of our comfort zones, because that's life's practicalities. But what I would say is most people who are vegan are doing it so wildly wrong. It's ridiculous how wrong they're doing it. Most people are on the nut and seed diet, as one example. Many of them are on junk food, processed foods, eating all these meat substitutes full of GMO soy and wheat and all that stuff. You're going to get sick. And anybody on any diet can create deficiencies. And the meat eaters love to use B12 as an example, except that there is not a single deficiency that is exclusive to the plant-based eating diet. So there's lots of meat eaters who also have B12 deficiencies. So by no means eating like a mountain lion did that protect them from said deficiency. So if you develop a deficiency in a vegan diet, doesn't necessarily mean that the vegan diet was wrong. Maybe you just did it wrong. Maybe if you corrected the real underlying deficiencies, you'd find out that it wasn't in adding something into your diet that makes you feel better. I mean, the same can be said for Atkins and paleo and all these things. What gets excluded from the diet is often as powerful as what's included. Mm-hmm. So you can eat a vegan diet and exclude some of the foods that you absolutely need. I mean, there's an epidemic of fear-based programming around fruit, for example, which is so obscene. But go ahead, be a vegan and eat no fruit for a long period of time, and I can assure you, you will have no energy, you will have deficiencies, and you will have some very serious, very real health problems. So, the slippery slope of human psychology leads us down these weird rabbit holes that somehow we arrive at these conclusions that aren't logically consistent. It's like, there's a lot of different examples we come up with where if X is true and Y is true, therefore Z must be true. But there's a breakdown in the logic in there somewhere. But by all means, live a practical life. If it makes you feel better, go for it. Just remain intellectually honest, so those who are keen or insistent on objectivity can keep their sanity when they're around you.
I think you touched on I think you touched on some good things there, that the around fruit as well. The ketogenic diet, keto vegan will be next. It'll be So I 100% agree, and I think there's a lot of people who go on about paleo, etc., and they look terrible. And there's other people going about vegan, and they look terrible. But then there's the flip side. There's people on paleo who look good, and there's people on vegan that look good. If you're doing things right as a vegan, I think majority of the time you're going to look pretty good. But there's certain things I think that the healthiest people on the planet, like when I talk to most people on here, they're very healthy people because they live pretty much a holistic lifestyle, and their food comes from quality sources. They're taking things like liver cleansers on a daily basis. They're having probiotics or fermented foods. They're taking things like, I don't know, for example, MSM for the skin, and their detoxification, and vitamin C, and they're going for infrared saunas, and they're doing all these things that they're going to make them increase their health. Whereas a lot of people will just jump on the bandwagon for something and they cut out meat, but as you said, they're still having Mars bars. Doesn't have meat. They're still having donuts because it doesn't have meat. And that's the point. I think there's a lot of common ground. A lot of the healthiest people in the world, I'd say, they share a lot of common ground, which I think you'd probably agree with.
Oh, there's no debate about it when you really look at the real longevity societies. There's clear emerging patterns there to be found for anyone who really wants to see them. But if you want to go and find evidence for whatever it is you want to be true, instead of being objective and cutting all emotional ties, then you can find some evidence for it.
Like a pharmaceutical company does.
Right.
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 Yeah, sorry.
Right. That you can improve your health with poison somehow is the most absurd thing ever. But yet we've got, billions of people who buy into that idea. So you want to go find, you can find what you want to be true, or you could be objective first and then with no emotional attachment to it, and then decide what is, and then decide after that what you'll decide to live with. Like I don't live perfectly. I just very insistent on being objective as an educator because I think it's really important, and I don't want to be unobjective and hurt my own family or hurt my own health. If I decide to consume something that's not good for me, I did it at least with good conscience, and I'm okay with it. I've accepted it instead of inventing all this childish bullshit of lying to ourselves all the time, which our society is so addicted to. And I think that's just one of my biggest messages, and that I wish people would be unemotional, look for the truth, and you'll find it. Yeah. The primates didn't read the wrong textbook. There's no other way to say that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well, when you're going through an illness, when you're going through an illness, or you're getting through a health crisis, there's a certain way of living that you probably have to do for a while. And then when you come out of that, you got to enjoy your human experience, right? You got to live. But if you're doing the things right after you come out of that 95% of the time, the 5% is not going to matter a huge deal, because your body's so phenomenal at healing. It's when you're doing things wrong all the time. But if you're going through a program like your cancer program, for example, you got to do things right for a fair while to get yourself in a place of not being ill anymore. But once you've come out of that and you're on the other side, yeah, you can enjoy life. You just got to know that your constitution wasn't as strong as what it probably once was, and you've got to give your immune system as much help as it can get. So that would just be my thing. I mean, guys, we kept you on for so long here, Terry. I'm sorry, we could talk for hours, me and you, on this, but it's been really good talking to you. I want everyone to know out there, go over to www.terrytillarrt.com, and also /programs. He's got different programs for, he's got his cancer program we've talked about today. He's also got an extreme pain resolution program, a rapid immunity program, and a weight loss program. And I'm sure I'll be getting him back on to talk about some of those, because especially the extreme pain resolution, And well, the rapid immunity program and cancer program, I think they might have a few similarities in them. Would I be right?
Oh, yeah, they all have similarities, absolutely, because the fundamentals don't change. And it's a novel idea for people that didn't get out of pain without drugs. I don't know why, but our society hasn't accepted that. And but yeah, no, I really appreciate you having me on. And the last thing I'd leave people with is that there's social media is a great place to interact. It's I post a lot of content on there. And I like hearing people. I like getting to know new people and meeting new people, and I appreciate that interaction. So find me on Facebook, especially, and love to connect with you on there.
No, awesome. Thanks very much, Terry. Hopefully we're getting you on soon. But yeah, thanks, and I'm sure everyone has got so much out of this. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I hope you have a good day.
Same to you, Ryan. I really appreciate you having me on here, and I look forward to chatting again sometime in the future. Awesome. Have a fantastic day, everyone.
Awesome. Cheers, Terry.
Take care.
Well, guys, there we have it. What an interview that was with Terry Tillarrt. As I said before, you can find Terry at www.terrytillarrt.com, and he's got programs there for cancer, for weight loss, for pain reduction, and lots of other ailments. And I'm sure that's just opened up if those of you guys that are quite into health, you might have known a few of these things already, but those of you that are not, it probably opened your eyes. Even if you did, it probably opened your eyes even wider to someone who's been helping people with cancer for a long time, and probably dive deep into different aspects of health and detoxification, as well as going into a little bit about the vegan diet and veganism and all things that you can do to help stop your body getting ill, getting diseased, getting at dis-ease, or is your body at dis-ease, and how you can strengthen your immune system, and lots of different things. So I'm sure that episode has really opened your eyes, if not ripped your eyes open, to what cancer is and how it's not bad luck, and how it is actually your immune system is crying out for help. So guys, that was a brilliant episode, if I don't say so myself. I really enjoyed interviewing Terry, and we're getting back on, I'm sure, at a later date. If you want to, say before, if you've got any questions health-wise, you need any help with your health, and you are suffering, there's lots of articles over at www.reviveyourself.co. And if you want to reach out to me, you'd like any help with your diet, or any gut issues, or any sort of skin issues you've got, etc., other health issues, then head on over to the same site, www.reviveyourself.co/contact. Send me a message and I'll get to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, guys, next week's interview, or next episode, is with Dr. Jessica Petros, who was a medical doctor until she went through her own health issues, and now she practices holistically, and that's going to be a great listen for everyone out there. Okay, guys, so as always, I'll see you next week, or I'll see you in the next episode, I should say. Stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll speak to you soon.
If you're struggling with gut issues, such as gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, indigestion, heartburn, and want to finally be able to eat the foods you love without the crippling after effects, then don't forget to head over to reviveyourself.co and pick up your free copy of The Healing Health Paradigm today.